Doge is asking the public's help in fighting fraud within Medicaid, releasing its largest trove of data in history in an effort to eliminate waste and abuse. Elon Musk celebrating the move on X, writing, quote, Medicaid data has been open sourced, so the level of fraud is easy to identify. Doge is not a department, it's a state of mind. Joining me now is Gianno Caldwell, Fox News political analyst, and Theo, Wold, former deputy assistant to President Trump. Thank you both for joining us. All right, Theo, going to you. I love what Elon said. It's a state of mind. It's not a department, but the question is, will that big bureaucracy of the federal government follow suit? Because I see a lot of deep staters who don't really want to follow through on this.
Yeah, I think the beauty is that the department doesn't have to follow suit. What Elon has done is made available for every enterprising citizen journalist in the country to get to the bottom of what's being spent and who's spending it. So we're no longer reliant on the mainstream media's investigative apparatus to get to the facts. We can use YouTubers or folks with a handheld camera out in Los Angeles. So it's Elon's power play. I think it's brilliant.
Is that what it's going to take, Gianno? A bunch of, Nick Shirley's out there doing this? Or I think the American people have woken up to, they almost feel like they're chumps. I pay my taxes, I work hard, 100%. I'm a good citizen. And then these people are just ripping us off. But do you see people going to jail? Because at this point, I see some arrests, but I don't see people like locked up in bars and crying on their way into jail.
Well, I'm from Chicago, born and raised. In Illinois, we've had a number of corrupt politicians over the years, so there should be people going to jail. The people like Nick Shirley, the Nick Shirleys of the world, the citizen journalists who decide to go out there and talk about the fraud that exists in our country, whether that be in Minnesota, whether that be in Washington, D.C., whether that be in California, as we know, the homeless funds, the billions of dollars given there, or the train to nowhere that never actually happened. These are very serious situations where the government's people, or rather not the government's people, the people's money, if I were to be more clear and concise about what this is, the people's money have been wasted. There's been waste, fraud, and abuse, whether it be for COVID funds, whether it be for unemployment, whether it be for just a train to nowhere. There should be accountability, and we've not necessarily seen that. And we've not necessarily known what is the waste, fraud, and abuse until Doge and Elon Musk have come around. So hopefully this is going to wake up folks. And, just like you, Jason, you ran a committee on accountability. You were the chairman. You have seen these kind of issues, but now we need to see the DOJ take action, especially where it's needed.
Well, and everybody got mad at me because I didn't put anybody in handcuffs, and I said, I'm in the legislative branch. I don't get handcuffs. So anyway, Theo, still a little sore about that one, just if you couldn't tell. Theo, President Trump's put us on an economic trajectory to really have this truly golden age of prosperity in this country. Democrats are trying to slow that down at any chance they can. They want to throw a wrench in everything. So what's it going to take to, quote unquote, sell President Trump's economic agenda coming into the midterms? Because these races and who gets the nominations, that's happening like right now.
Yeah, it sells itself when you actually hear the numbers. 4% GDP growth, 2.2% inflation. It's been reduced to 2.2%. Lowest murder rate since 1902, an airtight sealed border, Absolutely. And a 10% reduction in government employees in D.C. Numbers that no one thought possible. So I think when people hear the numbers, they sell themselves. The question is, do we have the surrogates? Do we have our out here?
Yeah, do you have the right candidate? Yeah, do you have the right candidates? And Gianno, that's always the question. Do you have the messengers to go out and sell it? Because I think stats are important, but people really got to feel it in their wallets. And I certainly feel it like when I go to the gas station, because gas is literally dollars less than it used to be.
No, 100%. And President Trump has really succeeded on that front economically, like a lot of people voted for him. But I'll even jump on Theo's point in terms of the crime rate. We have a president who has, and Pam Bondi, to our Attorney General of the United States, we got to give her a lot of credit, who's making America safe again. We're now seeing the numbers because of their actions. In fact, people know this. Some people know this. My brother was murdered June 24, 2022 in Chicago. I started the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety. We're having an event at Mar-a-Lago next Tuesday, February 24th. I encourage people to go to our website, caldwellinstitute.org, and get tickets. We want to see people there, people who are encouraged about what President Trump has been doing. And these things won't stop. We have a midterm election that's coming up. We have to ensure that we have a reinforcement when it comes to these congressional elections to ensure that President Trump can continue to do the job that he's been doing. Because as we know, Democrats, if they were able to seize the House, if they were able to take control of it, we know for a fact that their only mission will be impeaching President Donald Trump. Not about crime, not about affordability, not about safety, any of those things. They only have one issue, and that's seizing power. We cannot allow that to happen. So again, please join us at Mar-a-Lago, February 24th, caldwellinstitute.org. We got to continue to see this train move forward and make sure that public safety is a very important issue, number one issue, especially in my case.
Theo, last word to you. I've only got about 20 seconds, so last word to you.
Look, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Democrats have made their main priorities shutting down the border, abolishing immigration enforcement, and all of this stuff that comes with that, closing down FEMA, shutting down the Coast Guard. It's emblematic of their priorities. President Trump is promising prosperity and continued good work. I think that's where the American people's hearts need to be.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Gianno Caldwell, Theo Wold, thank you so much for joining us on Kudlow.